2008. Rikers Island, New York. 400 acres, fewer than 5,000 prisoners, completely sealed off. Inside, a fully functioning economic system. Exchange rate: 7 packs of mackerel for 1 human life. Act 1. 0. What happens when you strip a human being of everything? The first thing they take is your clothes. You walk in wearing whatever you had on. Maybe a suit, maybe jeans, maybe the same shirt you wore for 3 days of court hearings. It doesn't matter. Everything comes off. Everything goes into a bag. The bag gets a number. From then on, you become that number. Then they hand you a uniform, identical to the one worn by the guy next to you. That's the point. The ultimate goal of prison is to erase individual identity, to reduce a human being to a unit. In the language of economists, to create a blank slate. But the thing is, humans are never blank slates. Former inmate Damon Williams, who served 11 years in a California state prison, described his first week like this. The first thing you realize is that you need things. Not big things, small things. A decent toothbrush, an extra pair of socks, conditioner, stamps to write home. The commissary exists, but it's only open once a week, and you don't always have money in your account. And even if you do, there's a spending limit. So you start looking around. You start asking. Within a day, one day, you figure out everything has a price. Everything. And that price isn't dollars. That price is whatever people feel it's worth. That last sentence is deeper than it sounds. Whatever people feel it's worth. Those few words are the entire foundation of monetary theory. Value is neither innate nor fixed. It is a collective hallucination, a social agreement maintained by the trust and behavior of everyone participating in the system. And inside a prison, that system gets built from scratch every time, with whoever happens to be in the commissary line. Economists spend entire careers trying to understand how markets form, how prices are set, how trust is established between strangers. They build models, they run experiments, they debate. But prisoners don't have time for debates. When you're hungry and the guy next to you has bread. When you're cold and the guy next to you has a blanket. A look, a gesture, and the deal is done. Instant, spontaneous, inevitable. This is what Austrian economist Friedrich Hayek called spontaneous order. But before we dive into how this system works, we need to understand what it runs on. Every economy needs a currency. And the story of what prisoners have used as money over the decades is one of the most fascinating and revealing threads in all of economic history. That story, like so many others, begins with a single cigarette. Act 2. The cigarette standard. How a stick of tobacco became the reserve currency of the incarcerated world. The first person to do serious academic research on a prison economy wasn't in a prison. He was a British prisoner of war. In 1945, economist R.A. Radford was released from a German POW camp and published a paper that shocked the economics world. The economic organization of a POW camp. In it, he documented something extraordinary. When Red Cross parcels arrived, containing food, soap, chocolate, and cigarettes, the prisoners immediately started trading. At first, it was simple. Someone who didn't like jam would swap with someone who didn't like margarine. Fair enough. But then, something interesting happened. Cigarettes stopped being just cigarettes. Within weeks, everything in the camp was priced in cigarettes. A shirt, 80 cigarettes. A chocolate bar, 15 cigarettes. A haircut, 2 cigarettes. Even the camp priest started accepting cigarettes as offerings. No one ever decided cigarettes should become money, but they did, because they perfectly matched all the qualities of good money. Standardized, divisible, portable, durable, easy to store, and most importantly, everyone wanted them. Even non-smokers would take them, because they knew they could always trade them for whatever they needed. Radford watched inflation and deflation happen in real time in the POW camp. When a large shipment of Red Cross supplies arrived, the supply of cigarettes spiked, and the cigarette price of everything went up. When shipments were delayed, prices fell. Supply and demand, playing out in a 1944 POW camp as faithfully as any textbook would predict. The same thing happened in American prisons for decades. From roughly the 1950s through the early 2000s, cigarettes were the dominant currency in US federal and state prisons. Former inmates from that era describe a system of astonishing sophistication. Marcus Reed, who served 14 years in a federal facility in Ohio, described it like this. Cigarettes were everything. You could buy food, protection, information, favors. You could pay someone to do your laundry. You could pay someone to fight for you. The prices were stable enough that everyone knew them. 3 cigarettes for a meal from the kitchen. 5 cigarettes for a phone call favor. 24, something more serious. It wasn't chaos. It was a system. A real system, with rules. The key phrase there. With rules. Because the thing about prison economies that most people don't understand, the thing that makes them genuinely fascinating, rather than just disturbing, is that they are not anarchic. They are not random. They self-regulate. They develop norms. They punish cheating. They reward reliability. In almost every measurable way, they behave like real markets. Then, in 2004, the US federal prison system banned smoking. The cigarette standard collapsed overnight. From an economic standpoint, it was exactly like a government abandoning the gold standard. Overnight, all the money in people's hands turned into worthless paper. Guess what happened next? Not chaos, adaptation. In just 3 weeks, the entire federal prison system had found a new universal currency. Not tuna, not sardines, mackerel, specifically. The disgustingly salty, pouch-packed mackerel sold through prison commissaries for about $1.50 a pack. As a 2008 Wall Street Journal investigation put it, it became the de facto currency of the federal prison system. Why mackerel? Same logic as cigarettes. Updated for a smoke-free environment. Jerome Carter, released from a federal facility in 2016, put it bluntly. You never open the pouch. Opening the pouch is like burning a dollar bill. The value is in the sealed pack. Everyone knows that. New guys would come in and try to eat one, and we'd look at them like they'd lost their minds. That's not food. That's money. And the perfect money is exactly what nobody actually wants to consume. The mackerel economy spread through the federal system with remarkable speed. Inmates started using it to pay for everything from legal advice fellow inmates who'd studied law and could help with appeals to protection, commissary loans, gambling debts. Then the system got more sophisticated, because it always does. Act 3. The market. How supply, demand, and violence create a functioning economy. On the outside, a beat-up old phone with a cracked screen might be worth $50 at most. But inside the same prison, that phone can sell for the equivalent of $800 in commissary goods. Because inside contact with the outside world is the scarcest resource of all. Prison phone calls are expensive and monitored. Letters are slow and read by guards. A smuggled smartphone gives its owner something almost no one else has: unrestricted access to the outside world. That scarcity creates extraordinary value. Terence Holloway, who spent 9 years in a Georgia state prison and later became a prison reform advocate, described the phone economy like this: a working smartphone with a signal was the most valuable thing in the building. More valuable than drugs, more valuable than food, more valuable than almost anything. Because it wasn't just a phone, it was leverage. You could run businesses from that phone. You could coordinate things on the outside. You could talk to your kids at 2 a.m. without a guard listening. The price went up every year I was in. By the time I left, a decent phone with a working SIM was going for the equivalent of $600 to $800 in commissary goods. And people paid it. But phones are the luxury market. The everyday market runs on more mundane goods. Sociologist Michael Gibson Light from the University of Arizona documented what he called ramenomix. In a 2016 study, ramen noodles, cheap, shelf-stable, endlessly tradable, have become the dominant currency in many state prison systems, especially as commissary restrictions have tightened. The reason wasn't taste. It was supply chain. Ramen was available in larger quantities, more frequently, and at lower cost per unit than mackerel, making it more liquid. Liquidity means how easily you can turn an asset into a transaction. Ramen was liquid. You could always find someone willing to accept it. The study found that ramen was used to pay for laundry services, cell cleaning, protection, and even to settle gambling debts. It had its own exchange rate against other goods. Its price, in terms of other commissary items, was broadly understood and relatively stable. By any reasonable definition, it was money. Then, there's the underground supply chain, because no economy runs only on what's officially permitted. Drugs, cell phones, tobacco after the ban, homemade alcohol brewed from smuggled fruit and sugar, and all kinds of homemade weapons. They flow into prisons through visitors, guards, lawyers, even drones. A former corrections officer, who asked not to be named, did the math for a reporter. He earned $38,000 a year, barely enough to pay rent after expenses. Someone offered him $2,000 to bring in 2 ounces of marijuana, and those 2 ounces, once inside, would sell for 10 times that. I knew it was wrong, he said. But when someone puts that much cash in front of you, your body makes a choice. This is never just individual evil. This is structural corruption. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes to talk about. Debt. Every market produces debt. As soon as you have a unit of account and a medium of exchange, credit follows inevitably. Inside prison, The terms of credit are not enforced by contract law. They are enforced by violence. Act 4. The enforcement mechanism. What happens when you can't call a lawyer to collect a debt? The standard interest rate on a prison loan is called 2 for 1. You borrow 1 pack of mackerel today. 7 days later, you pay back 2 packs. 100% interest. Annualized, that's roughly 5,000%. To put that in context, the highest interest rate ever charged by a legal payday lender in the United States peaked at around 700% APR. Prison loans charge more than 7 times that. Why would anyone borrow at those terms? Because they have no choice. Raymond Davis, who served 12 years in a Texas state prison, described how the debt system worked. Everyone borrowed at some point. You didn't have commissary that week, or you lost a bet, or something happened, and you needed something urgently. The sharks, that's what we called the lenders. They were always around, always friendly at first. It's only when payday came, and you couldn't pay, that you understood what the interest rate was really for. The interest rate wasn't about money. It was about keeping you in debt. Because as long as you owed them, they owned a piece of you. If you borrow 1 pack and can't pay it back, the debt snowballs. Next week, it becomes 4 packs. The week after, 8 packs. Within a month, a debt that started as 1 pack becomes mathematically unpayable. This is the core insight of prison debt culture. The goal of lending is not profit, or not only profit. The goal is leverage, permanent structural leverage, over another human being. And when a debt becomes unpayable, the enforcement mechanism activates. This is where the economy and violence intersect. In prison, there is no court, there is no sheriff to serve a judgment. There is only credibility. And credibility in prison is established by one thing: demonstrated willingness to use violence. Damon Williams, the former California inmate quoted earlier, was blunt about this. The guys running the lending weren't the biggest guys. They weren't the most physically dangerous. They were the guys with the most organizational reach. They had people, if you didn't pay. It wasn't them who came to see you. It was someone they sent. And that person's job wasn't to hurt you, not first. First, they came to remind you. The hurt came later. If the reminding didn't work, the whole point was that everyone knew the hurt was real. That's what made the lending work. Not the interest rate. The reputation. This is not so different from how enforcement worked in pre-legal economies throughout history. Medieval merchant guilds, early banking families in Renaissance Florence. Before state law existed to enforce commercial agreements, protection always ultimately rested on the threat of physical consequence. Prison didn't invent this. Prison just tore away all the camouflage and revealed the raw mechanism underneath. Act 5. The power structure. Who really runs the economy? And what they do with that power? Is the warden the most powerful person in prison? Dead wrong. It's the people who control the economy. They may not be the best fighters, but they have the best business brains. They have starting capital, distribution networks, ledgers kept carefully in their heads, and most important of all, reputation. They know which guards can be bribed, which times are safest for smuggling, who can be trusted, and who needs to be taken care of. In every relevant sense, this is the skill set of a banker. Curtis Brooks, who spent 16 years in various federal facilities, said, "The smartest guys in the prison weren't the college graduates, and they weren't the muscleheads. They were the guys who truly understood value. Those guys might have been successful bankers or entrepreneurs on the outside. They just happened to be in prison." And here's the chilling part. This economic system has never been contained by the walls. Phones that come in carry orders that go out. Drug supply chains that originate outside extend their tentacles inside through corrupt guards and visiting rooms. Money that enters through the commissary system gets converted into real-world value through complex chains of favors and relationships. In 2012, a federal indictment in the United States described a distribution network spanning 4 states that was being coordinated almost entirely through a series of smuggled smartphones by an incarcerated leader in a Florida facility. The prison wasn't a setback for his business. It was his headquarters. Act 6. The Ramen Rebellion. When the economy became political. 2011. Pelican Bay, State Prison, California. 6,500 prisoners simultaneously went on a hunger strike. Not a chaotic, disorganized protest. This was a highly coordinated action. The first strike lasted 21 days. A second strike followed in 2013, involving more than 30,000 inmates. And the people organizing these strikes were precisely the ones who controlled the prison economy. The same channels that had once been used to move mackerel, ramen, and contraband were now used to pass messages. The same networks that had once been used to collect debts were now used to organize collective action. What they were protesting was the system of long-term solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is the ultimate economic sanction inside a prison. Complete removal from the market. Complete isolation from the economy. Complete elimination of agency. Todd Ashker, one of the key organizers of the Pelican Bay strike, spent over 20 years in solitary confinement. He described the elaborate communication systems prisoners developed to maintain economic and social networks. Even under extreme isolation. They think solitary breaks connections. It doesn't. It just makes you more creative at maintaining them. We passed notes through food slots. We communicated through the ventilation system. We built relationships through lawyers and family visits. The system thought it had cut us off. It hadn't. You can't cut off human beings from each other. We always find a way. The California Department of Corrections eventually agreed to a series of reforms, limiting the use of long-term solitary confinement, a direct result of the strike. The prison economy had become a tool of political resistance. Those considered the most brutal and violent had used their own rules to beat the state's rules. Act 7. The cost. What this system does to the people inside it. After hearing all this, you might marvel at how humans can build markets in the ruins of everything. But it's just as important not to lose sight of what this economy costs. The debt traps are real. People fall into borrowing arrangements mathematically designed to be inescapable. Interest compounds, leverage deepens. The only exit is violence, either inflicting it or receiving it, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics. There are approximately 180,000 inmate-to-inmate violent incidents in U.S. prisons every year. A large portion of them stem from debt disputes, theft, or competition over underground supply chains. The corruption that the prison economy generates is not limited to a few bad actors. It is structural. Low wages, proximity to high-value contraband, the social pressure of working in an isolated institution. These conditions make corruption, statistically, almost inevitable. And every guard corrupted by the prison economy damages the institution's ability to function, creating feedback loops that make conditions worse for everyone inside. Epilogue: what the cell block teaches us. The prison economy is not a curious sideshow. It is a mirror. It reflects the world we think we left behind. The spontaneous emergence of currency, the formation of credit markets, violence as the ultimate enforcement of contracts, the conversion of economic power into political power. All of these exist in the outside world too. The only difference is that on the outside, they are wrapped in law, in institutions, in elaborate social fictions that make markets seem natural, fair, and neutral. Prison tears all of that away. It tells us a truth that most economics textbooks are too polite to say out loud. Markets are never neutral. Markets are power. And power, wherever it exists, will always find a way to enforce itself. The economist Adam Smith wrote in 1776 that truck, barter, and exchange were fundamental characteristics of human nature. He was writing about the birth of capitalism, but he could just as easily have been writing about that prison on Rikers Island, the place where the exchange rate that's hard to believe still exists today.